Welcome to Dimensional Shift, where we explore and actively deprogram ourselves, seek the truth of reality through expanding our perceptions, and focus on full remembrance of our true selves. As we begin to connect to our true selves, we will also see the truth of this illusory reality and the way it controls us through our manipulated perceptions. As soon as we fully remember our true selves, we will also see the enemy for what it is and how to rebalance the system by freeing ourselves and assisting others to do the same, creating a domino effect into the evolution of human consciousness. Welcome back to Dimensional Shift. Today we're going to be talking about some diluted concepts and terms that have been used over the centuries and millennia to talk about different spiritual concepts that have been either bait and switched or have just gotten so convoluted that the meanings that we put with these words aren't close to what the actual concept is. All of this is said from my own perspective and with my own experience. You may not agree with all of it, and that's fine. But it's something to explore as we start to talk about some of these words. Things to think about how the meanings have gotten distorted. And there is an agenda behind this because these words have been purposefully diluted, they've been purposefully redefined and purposefully programmed to mean different things to keep the community confused, keep the community arguing about it, as well as some darker things like creating tracks or paths for us to follow into traps. I have several words that I want to go over today. Some of them I'll only be touching on a couple of them, but some of them have a little more of an explanation than others. The first one, and I think probably the biggest one, is the word ascension. The way that the word ascension is used today indicates that there's some kind of big release into an escape into a better reality. And I guess my own personal opinion, I don't see that happening in the way that most people do. But the problem is, number one, it's keeping you in a place of seeking some kind of external release or some kind of external validation that what you're doing is right. Number two, it's pushing you towards some kind of escape. So as long as you're trying to get out of here or move on to a new place, you're not focusing on making this a better place here. And it's keeping you from working on yourself and going through the work that needs to be done to create a better you and create a better world. It's very much external, and it's very much about getting out of here rather than actually making this a better place. The next word is enlightenment, and I prefer to use the term full remembrance. Enlightenment puts a lot of people on a pedestal, like say Buddha or Jesus. It makes it a goal, and it's a very difficult goal to achieve. It would be something like you work your whole lifetime and may or may not achieve it. And I've also found that when you strive and work towards something, you are actually doing the opposite of working towards enlightenment, because enlightenment requires a letting go of things, in my experience. Working towards full remembrance, however, indicates that you already know it, you just have to allow yourself to remember it. It's more like a recall rather than something you have to strive for and learn toward. Then there's the term awakening. This one, it gets thrown around a whole lot, and it's even created a lot of division between the woke folk and the sheep and, all of that. I prefer the term disillusionment because to me, when you are awakening to what's going on in the world. You're seeing there's more of a problem than either the media wants you to think or that the media is itself a problem. You're awakening up to the fact that not all is as it seems. The other problem with calling yourself awake, and not everybody does this, but in general, most people do, is it creates a sense of superiority, which feeds into your ego, and is again used to divide. So instead of saying, I'm awake, it might be better to say, I've been disillusioned. I can see through the crap now, and that doesn't have any hierarchy to it. Dimensions. There are so many theories of the way the dimensions work. There's only a couple of things I'm going to say about this, and I think the important thing is that we realize all dimensions exist here and now. We just can't perceive them because our minds have been caged through conditioning and programming two give us a very limited experience of what's actually going on. There's not going to be a 3D to 5D shift. That would be like the ascension, in as much as our physical bodies or our spiritual bodies are suddenly going to go from living here in the 3D world to living in a 5D world. It's a lot more complex than that. And I can probably say with much certainty that no one has ever seen 5D because our minds at this point can't comprehend it. But that's not saying that someone with psychedelics or something like that may not have gotten glimpses of. It's just saying that on an everyday basis, it's really kind of difficult to wrap our minds around. One of the most interesting terms that gets thrown around, and probably improperly used, is grounding. The idea that you ground before you astral project or do any kind of spirit walking or anything like that is actually limiting you. When you anchor yourself to this earth, you're not allowing yourself to go up freely into other dimensions. The best way to get around this is to overcome your fear of death. Not as easy as just saying it, right? But the only way you're going to be able to get out of body and into the astral traveling is overcoming that fear of death, not being willing to allow your astral form to leave your body fully. Now, you can, when you come back, you can ground afterwards instead, because your body is going to need that grounding to understand that it's back here, it's safe, that it's still whole and nothing actually bad happened. You can do this by walking around on earth, you can do this by doing a grounding ritual with your energy, or you can just go eat some food, something healthy hopefully, but go eat some food, remind your body that it's still there and safe. The next thing is spiritual and psychic gifts. I think the key word here is gift. Anytime we talk about somebody having a gift, that means that they're automatically special. But the irony is we all have access to all of them. It's just a matter of how much work we've put in to access them. One of the traps laid for these spiritual and psychic gifts is the idea that it keeps people on the tracks of, I can use my psychic gifts to help others and make money. And that's the track that is not necessarily helpful. Chasing money isn't fulfilling. It keeps you in the system. One of my least favorite spiritual concepts, and not the concept itself, but the way that it is put into motion right now, is mirroring. People ask people who are going through something in a relationship, like a really difficult time, well, what are they mirroring for you? And in my experience, that does a lot more harm than good, especially for people who are in really difficult or abusive relationships, because that's essentially, it's victim shaming. And you're saying that that person is doing that to them because they deserve it, is kind of how it feels to someone in that situation. Mirroring in itself is actually a very advanced concept when you get into the really deep universal laws and all of that. But trying to use mirroring on someone who's going through difficult situations on a very human level, it's not helpful. It's just really not. And this is probably going to be my most controversial one, is the twin flame. Most people think that twin flames are going to be finding your yin to your yang, and there's going to be balance. And that's actually, in my experience, and from what I've seen with other people, that's not what it is. Twin flames are meant to be catalysts. They are meant to shove all of your stuff in your face so you can get through it quickly, and are almost always end up codependent, breaking up, going through a dire separation, and you have the opportunity to lose yourself in that person and stay trapped. Oftentimes, twin flames are meant to prevent awakenings. Sometimes they are used as an agent to prevent someone who is meant to lead to stay stuck and not awaken, and it can prevent soul growth. And they are extremely difficult to get out of, even once you realize that's what's happening. But it's possible. It's very possible. The next one would be your consciousness or your soul. So consciousness has been equated with the word awake, meaning physically awake. You're not sleeping, right? You're not sleeping, you're conscious. Consciousness, however, in the spiritual sense, is the direct link we have to higher consciousness. And we use this link through our soul and our intuition. So the link would be our consciousness to higher consciousness. The messages come through our intuition. The chakras have kind of taken the place of the subtle body. They are manipulation points for your subtle body. Compartmentalizing your energy into chakra points is detrimental to your overall growth. It's easy to conceptualize, yes, and I've heard of people being able to heal certain things based on that compartmentalization, but at some point you have to realize that none of it works in a closed system, and the only way to move on and grow with your subtle body is to integrate them all. When I interact with my subtle body, or I use my subtle body, however you want to say it, I have one point in my chest center that I connect through to my consciousness and my intuition. One of my favorite points that I was going to make today is that synchronicities are not everything. I have people I know that have a meaning for every number they could ever see, and they find meaning in just about everything. And I don't think that that's how synchronicities actually work. I would call those a false synchronicity. If every number has a meaning, when are you ever going to see a number that doesn't have a meaning? And because of this, they're led down a lot of paths that maybe they shouldn't be led down. And it ruins the specialness, I guess you could say, the uniqueness that a synchronicity requires. The only signs that I take as a synchronicity anymore is something that jumps out at me and surprises me and gives me some kind of intuitive hit that makes me think twice about what I'm doing, and things that repeat. Even so, numbers that repeat don't surprise me so much anymore, so I don't put a lot of stock in them. But it's important just to be aware that not all events need to be synchronicities, especially if you're looking for a synchronicity to happen. If you're sitting by the clock waiting for 1:10 to turn into 1:11 just so you can say it's a synchronicity, that's a false synchronicity, and it's not going to lead you anywhere you want to go. There's also lessons. This is kind of a controversial topic. People go back and forth between Earth as a school and Earth as a prison, and, it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Not everything is a lesson, at least for you. And that can also lead to victim shaming again. If you're telling somebody who's going through a hard time, well, this is just a lesson for you, then you might as well be invalidating their feelings and experiences. That person has to be able to recognize on their own that it's a lesson and to learn from it. It's like leading a horse to water. You can't make it drink. And while the ultimate mindset would be that everything would be a lesson, everything would be something to learn from, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's in that mindset. The last one I want to talk about, and this is the one I've been exploring the most, is the simulation theory. And I've been doing a lot of research past few days about what it is and how it works and different takes on it and all of that. And the paradigm I'm working with right now is that we are all thought forms of the higher consciousness. Our purpose is to puzzle out things and create solutions so that we can evolve and move on to solve other problems, because the higher consciousness is essentially exploring itself and trying to understand itself just as we are. It's all very fractalized. And so if you think of a simulation is, in our world, it's a computer program that we run to solve a problem or to experience part of reality that would be dangerous to experience physically. We are just simulations in the sense that we are running through problems and experiencing things that the higher consciousness cannot experience itself. So rather than saying that we live in a virtual reality, which is still arguable, although my opinion is that it's not necessarily like that, but we are some kind of force of evolution to solve a problem, to adapt and explore so that we can go on and solve other problems and adapt and explore. So the higher consciousness, the conscious body, can adapt and explore itself as it fractalizes up and up and up and up and up. So I hope that these clarified some of the misconceptions about some of these words. Again, these are only within my own paradigm and depth of my experience in it. If you have any questions or would like to give some alternate theories, argue with me, tell me I'm wrong, I would love to hear that. You can leave a comment on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. Send me an email, revi@dimensionalshifter.com, or leave a review. Thanks for tuning in today. If you love this episode, please leave a 5-star review and share it with a friend so we can continue to share the message of synthesis into unity. Don't forget to join the Discord server at dimensionalshifter.com/Discord, and make sure to join our open discussions each Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Central and Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central in the server. You can also find me on Reddit. Send me a DM. My username is Dimensional Shifter.